So the host speaker will be Sabine Wedell. So I'm not sure if she's here yet. Oh, yes, she is. Wonderful. Wonderful. I didn't see you. The host speaker will be Sabine Wedell. Sabine is a project manager of the Trade Fair Fish International in Bremen, Germany. After over 20 years of experience with the product fish, Sabine knows the industry inside out. She's always in touch with the industry's concerns and succeeds in making them the topic of lively discussions. Thank you very much for being here, and you can now introduce your speakers, please.
So I will follow the list they gave me.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. So the first speaker is Frederick Kopolewski. He's communication officer at Sea Shepherd Global. I think we do it the same way. So you all come up and then you can start your presentation right after. And there's also Maud bin Sola from Malaysia, co-founder of Sea Patriots organization. Yeah,
Thank you.
And Paul Woods, CEO of Global Fishing Watch. He leads the technology team. Yeah, technical part. And there is Matthias Keller. He is from the Federal Association of the German Fish Industry and Fish Association. Please come up. I hope we had a chance to talk, but I'm sure we go through this. Yeah. Okay. We will have a 5-minute presentation, and Frederick will start. After the presentation, I will ask some questions, and also, I feel free. You should ask all the time whatever you like to ask.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Frederick. I like the short term Fred, so please feel free to call me Fred. I'm working in the IT business for 15 years now, and 3 years ago I decided to volunteer for Sea Shepherd because of all the problems we all know about our oceans, and I love the work Sea Shepherd does. And last year I got the opportunity to become a crew member on board the Sam Simon as the communications officer on board the vessel. And the first campaign I did was Solar Stella 2, which takes part in Liberia and is fighting against IUU fishing. So for that, I have a video that you please may start now. Thank you.
Launched in early 2017, Operation Solar Stella was a joint operation between Sea Shepherd and the Liberian government to tackle illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, so-called IUU fishing. Over a year, Sea Shepherd provided the use of a civilian offshore patrol vessel in Liberian waters to patrol against IUU fishing, under the direction of the Liberian Ministry of National Defense. Developing countries are particularly vulnerable to IUU fishing, which is believed to account for as much as 40% of the fish caught in West African waters. Before the commencement of Operation Solar Stella, the artisanal fishing community on the border with Côte d'Ivoire reported almost daily incursions from across the border by foreign industrial trawlers fishing illegally without a license. After the arrest of 5 IUU fishing vessels, the incursions ceased. Capitalizing on the success of the first patrols conducted February through May 2017, Sea Shepherd returned for 8 more months of at-sea patrols, from September 2017 until the end of May 2018, resulting in the longest patrol period to date. The second patrol period was called Operation Solar Stella 2. During these patrols, 7 more arrests were made by the Liberian Coast Guard with assistance from Sea Shepherd, including the arrests of 2 internationally blacklisted IUU fishing vessels, the Libico 2 and the Hai Lung. When the Libico 2 was boarded and inspected on November 15, 2017, it was discovered that the vessel, under its former name, Maine, was listed on 3 different Regional Fisheries Management Organization IUU blacklists for international fisheries offenses. At the time of boarding, the notorious poacher was deploying prohibited gill nets to feed a secret shark liver oil production facility housed on board the vessel. Documents seized on board proved that the vessel was killing more than 66,000 deep-sea sharks on every fishing expedition, resulting in more than 500,000 dead sharks per year. The Libico II was subsequently arrested, and its detention has saved the lives of more than 250,000 sharks. The Hai Lung, an infamous toothfish poacher better known by its previous name, the Yelly, was arrested on March 13, 2018, after the captain presented the Liberian Coast Guard with forged documentation claiming the vessel to be flagged to the Republic of Indonesia. The Indonesian authorities had no record of the vessel in their database. Thus, the forged certificate of nationality made the Hai Lung a vessel without nationality, subject to seizure anywhere, including on the high seas. It was later discovered that the Hai Lung had escaped detention in Nigeria and was a fugitive vessel. After a total of 12 months and 12 arrests, our patrols are having a deterrent effect with a dramatic drop in incidents of illegal fishing. Today, artisanal fishing communities are reporting that fish are returning to areas that have historically been decimated, formerly overexploited by foreign trawlers. Operation Sola Stella is a landmark example of what can be accomplished when government and civil society work together to combat IUU fishing. Sea Shepherd is incredibly proud of our historic partnership with the Ministry of National Defense in Liberia, and we look forward to continuing this project of cooperation and collaboration. And we are extremely grateful to our supporters and financial contributors who have made these incredible successes in Liberia possible. Thank you.
Fred, so you worked, as I understood, in Liberia, you worked in cooperation with the government.
Yes. Yes.
And how was that? Like, you were giving them the ship, or did they like that you controlled, that you supported them, or what happened?
What happened is that we as Sea Shepherd get in contact with Liberia and ask for a partnership to fight against IUU fishing, like we did previously in Gabon, where we had another campaign running where we did exactly the same. And they looked at what happened in Gabon and they said, okay, we want to do that. So they made the contract with us, and so the campaign starts, and we work together with the Minister of Defense and educated their coast guards, who actually do not have the money to have their own vessel in their country. So we brought one of our vessels, or we share 2 vessels on this area. We have the Bob Barker and the Sam Simon, changing every time. And we work close together with the Coast Guards on board. We live together with them. We fight together against all the illegal vessels we find. We board them, we inspect them, and then we finally arrest them.
Okay, and what's happening when you leave? I mean, is there any perspective?
What happens, what we figured out is that since it is common known that Sea Shepherd is around that area, it's very funny to see on marine traffic, for example, that fish trawlers they reach the coastline and see, oh, this is Liberia. We do a big spare around them, and during the time we are not around, we can't do something because our ships needs overhauls and they need repairs. So we have 2 or 3 months where we are not around, so where we cannot make sure that there is no illegal vessel fishing, but we will be as soon back as possible and the ship is ready to go.
And what are, in your opinion, the main challenges to implement a good fisheries management and reducing IUU fisheries?
That's a very tough question. I think this topic, I would reach out to everybody outside who's buying fish and should have a look what he's actually buying, and is it sustainable? Where comes the fish from? This is the main issue. I see people just buy whatever they found in the supermarket cheap as possible, and there you can be sure that this is not sustained fishing. This is definitely illegal fish from nobody knows where, and I think it's up to the customers to make the difference in that particular space.
I'm very sure that Matthias likes to discuss this. We'll keep this for later. You can give an answer. Okay, so we keep on going to help me with your name, please.
All right. Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shafrizan. I'm from Malaysia, and I would like to share with you what is our current practice, our current implementation in Malaysia, especially regarding sustainable fisheries. All right. Malaysia is located in Southeast Asia, and we have a pretty vast coastal line, about almost 4,500 kilometers coastal line, and we have very quite active fishing industry with almost 100,000 active registered fishing vessels, including fishing trawler, per se fishing vessel, as well as traditional fishermen. All right, as you can see, the worst thing is always happen at sea. You name it, any piracy issue, any transshipment, or any wrongdoing is always happen at sea. And this image is taken from our partner, which is shipmap.org. Credit to them. Okay, this is our fisheries zoning area. Is divided by 5 areas. As you can see, the first one would be traditional fishermen, which is from 1 to up to 8 nautical miles, and the second one would be 5 to 15 nautical miles. And as you can see also, the current practice, the current implementation in our country is we install AIS as a compulsory on board this vessel, and it also covers from 8 up to 15 nautical miles fishing trawler vessel, and on the deep sea, it's still using the satellite tracking unit, which is the mobile tracking unit. All right. What I would like to share with you today is back in 2014, we started this initiative, which is related with monitoring and control and surveillance from the Department of Fisheries, Malaysia. This image is taken from our business partner, which is Sapphire, satellite provider. They are based in United States. All right. This is a few challenges that we really focus into. One of them is illegal fishing, piracy, and of course, the search and rescue always conducted by our Malaysia Coast Guard. In 2016, Malaysia has come out with the result that we lost about around 4 to 6 billion due to IUU fishing in our country, and that's quite a huge amount for us. And I believe and I think here we are one of the country that subsidize this device, which is automatic identification, to our fishing trawler. So currently we are in the implementation of installing this device on board 2,000 plus fishing vessels in order to monitor them, in order to control them. And we also believe that with a great campaign, it should be a sustainable campaign, and this is our campaign stakeholder. As you can see, we started with Department of Fisheries Malaysia, and coming from the government agencies as well as the Coast Guard, and we do also have our educational institute, which comes from the NGOs and as well as the experts from the industry. And we also believe that it is always important that we engage with the right coastal communities, which is the fishermen itself. I will not go into technical on this. I would like to go into more casual, and I reserve any question on later. But this is our current map on the AIS. Of course, we're partnering with several business providers, service providers, satellite providers such as Exact Earth and Sapphire. We do also have our own infrastructure, our own AIS base station all over nationwide. But as you can see here, the most important part is the coming from the software is on the right panel, which is we monitor all kind of early warning coming from that device. And this is the device that we already installed on board all these fishing trawlers, and it should have 4 important features, which is for the search and rescue, of course for the identification purpose, collision avoidance, that is the basic function for the EIS, and to comply with the VTS and the VMS coming from authorities in Malaysia. And this device coming from our principal, which is WeatherDoc AG from Germany. We have their CEO here in this room, Mr. Efrat. Right. This is our panel that is showing all sort of warning, which is important for us to avoid manipulation, to avoid dark target, and to maintain the activation for the EIS device. And this image is taken from our survey recently. Of course, always fishermen wanted to vandal the AIS device. They're trying to cover our AIS with a panel or wooden type on the solar panel to cut off the device, totally going into that dark target. But again, I have to say here, we know the activities from the from our software. Okay, this is kind of monthly alert reports coming from this device that monitored by our Department of Fisheries. And in order to maintain the percentage of activation, they must reach always to maintain 70% monthly without any alert. In this case, this vessel is considered vandal and try to tamper their device without authority. And again, we are here to our mission is clearly towards sustainable fisheries. And as a new organization, Sea Patriots is a new organization we just formed early this year, and we engage with several maritime stakeholders, especially our Coast Guard, our fisheries, and we are the whistleblower, the think tank for Malaysia to raise awareness from the technology side. So I would like to end my presentation now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. So what is the percentage of ship trawlers that have already devices? Is it like 100%? Is it 60%?
Thank you. Right now, we reach almost 70% out of 2,600 installation.
Okay.
So it is already on the final phase. But then the rest of that, the fishermen right now is quite aware about this technology, and their initiative is they are trying to buy this kind of device for themselves without any government help, without any government subsidies. Because why? This is quite important for them for search and rescue. So we have to complement both sides on a win-win situation.
And when you have the device, you can be monitored, and it's obviously done, but how is the control part? How do you think, how good is the control?
All right.
What challenges are there? What needs to be done?
Yep. With almost over 100,000 fishing vessels, and right now we are only implementing on the fishing trawler, which is about 2,600 fishing vessels. It is almost impossible to control everyone. Of course, we have the data, but then again, we have to give them awareness and education in order to prevent these things happen in the future. And one of the things that we try to incentivize the fishermen through our initiative, which is one of that. In future, we are trying to engage with kind of blockchain technology. We try to partner with Fishcoin. They are based in Singapore, but that is coming soon, end of this year.
Okay, yeah. So there's more to go, obviously. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. The next speaker will be Paul Woods, and yeah, with a very global point of view.
There we go. Hi, I'm Paul Woods, and I just need to correct the program. Karsten gave me a promotion. I am not the CEO. I'm the CTO of Global Fishing Watch. I was the interim CEO when we stood the company up last year, but since then we brought in Tony Long, who was heading Pew's End Illegal Fishing program, is now the CEO of Global Fishing Watch. I'm also here with my colleague Aki, who's right here, who's standing up our Indonesia and Asia program. He's based in Jakarta. Global Fishing Watch. This is a platform built on AIS. We were happy to come here 3 years ago and show this before we had launched it. And so what we endeavored to do is illuminate all fishing, large-scale commercial fishing everywhere in the world. We use AIS to do this, which means we get about 60,000 maybe commercial fishing vessels worldwide. That's out of the 3 million or so there are. So it's a small fraction. It's all the big ones that use AIS. But programs like the one in Malaysia are increasing the number of vessels that we have in the platform. So our core mission is transparency. That's what we're all about, bringing transparency to fisheries. And we believe that transparency drives a lot of the positive improvements to reduce IUU. The company was founded by an NGO, SkyTruth, which is where I came from, Oceana, and is supported via technology partnership via Google. Though Google doesn't own the platform or do anything with it, they just give us free stuff. And as Karsten also mentioned, Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation is one of the lead funders that got us up and running. And if it makes you feel better, Karsten, he doesn't come to any of our events either. So, and Bloomberg Philanthropies also is the major funder, and there's some of the rest. And the way we got started, we built a prototype in 2015 using AIS with Orbcom. And then 2016, we did a public launch. That map I just showed you is available for free to anybody in the world at globalfishingwatch.org. In 2017, we spun out as an independent NGO instead of a project of the three partners. And we did our first launch of public VMS data, treating it the same way we treat AIS data. The VMS data comes from Indonesia. And then in 2018, we started focusing on transshipment, detecting encounters between vessels, and began seeing some of the fruits of the project with some of our major research outputs in peer-reviewed journals. So the public platform, global, like I said, 60,000 or so large commercial fishing vessels We're adding more every year, plus VMS systems adding thousands of vessels at a time. It's near real time, so we publish fishing activity detected from the movement data from January 1, 2012 up until 3 days before the present. It's designed to be very easy to use and free for everybody. So it's an open platform. That's the core product. So what we do is we take, so this is the whole world, AIS for 1 year, all the vessels. We get, like I said, we started with Orbcom and having a global feed from Orbcom, and now we also incorporate a global feed from Spire. And that gives us pretty nice coverage. We also use Exact Earth, not in the product, but for some real-time monitoring, we use their excellent ShipView product. So the basic idea is very simple. You look at different kinds of fishing. The vessels make different patterns when they move. We have trained machine learning models to identify these different patterns, and then we pull the fishing events out and we put them on the map. So then you end up with something like this. So the blue stuff is the AIS detected fishing, and the kind of yellow-green stuff over there around Indonesia is from the Indonesian VMS system. You'll note in this map there's very little going on around Malaysia. We're hoping that will improve. We also detect encounters between vessels, so between fishing vessels and refrigerated cargo vessels at sea, which is often transshipment of catch or and other things that facilitate IUU fishing. So then, and this is also on the public map now. You can get so you can find these encounters, and then you can, of course, with the fishing events and the transshipment events, you can zoom in down to the individual vessel, see which the vessel is, then view the past, the history of the vessel, where it went, where it was fishing, what port it went into, and soon we're going to automatically detect port entry and exit events and make that an output as well. So there's a bunch of stuff. I encourage you, globalfishingwatch.org, you can go up and play with it yourself if you want to see how it works. One of the major outputs from this program, in addition to the public platform that's been used by government, academics, NGOs, to look at the fishing activity in the areas they're interested in, some of which, a very small amount of which is illegal, much is in the 2 U's in IUU. So we have researchers at a number of universities who are doing peer-reviewed science using the data. Because it's a globally consistent data, you're able to do a lot of really interesting science. So we've had 6 papers come out in Science, Nature, Science Advances this year, including our main paper, which identified the methods that we use and was published in Science in February. And then since then, several other papers have come out. We're really excited about this because these are papers that ultimately drive policy. And they range from economics to evaluating the impact of the fisheries closure to foreign vessels in Indonesia. And the economics of the high seas is another really interesting thing. And then the most recent paper, the Blue Paradox, showing that a announced closure can actually temporarily trigger increased activity in the closure zone before the closure happens, as everyone tries to rush to get the last little bit before they get kicked out. That's all I have now. There's a lot more to talk about. I'll be happy to take questions or chat with you after.
Thank you. So if I understood right, you can track vessels that won't let them track anymore, or they turn it off, you can't track them, and later you will see them again. So that makes them suspicious. And you say they can be held accountable when they come into port, but what if they never come into port?
Yeah, that's an interesting problem, particularly with the vessels that we're now publishing, where you can see the transshipment events. So the supply happens at sea, the catch is offloaded at sea. Some of the VMS, the Indonesian VMS vessels that we track, we'll watch several vessels go out, and only one of them comes into port. Right, the rest of them stay out. They'll stay out there for a year or more. And so that's a very interesting problem, and from the sort of labor rights issues, it's very difficult because there's no opportunity for inspection enforcement if the vessel number comes in. So in Indonesia, they have a rule that says it's a violation to be out for more than 3 months. And so we worked with the VMS data we get from Indonesia to produce an automated report that goes to them, that tells them when vessels are staying out too long, and that is becoming part of their new IUU task force program to institute more enforcement. So one would hope eventually that vessel would be inspected at some point when it finally comes back into port.
But it sounds like there's more. There needs to be more. They need to look into more of what makes suspicious. I mean, transshipment is one, but there seems to be like algorithm that
yeah, there are a lot of interesting behaviors. We recently started a project that's actually funded by Walmart Foundation, the charitable giving group, that to look at whether or not you can model human rights risk based on activity you can detect with AIS and VMS. So based on where the vessel goes, what other vessels it encounters, what ports it goes to, can you provide a model that estimates the risk likelihood? So we're working on that with University of California, Santa Barbara this year.
And besides Indonesia, are there any other governments that already actively use your tool to control the fisheries?
Well, so it's not a full monitoring, control, and surveillance tool. Mostly what governments use it to do is to get a broad picture. So for instance, in Indonesia, there is a surveillance team which has access to all this data plus more. But that tends to be a data silo, and security services often are not really good at sharing with the rest of the government. So other parts of the government use Global Fishing Watch to understand broadly what's going on and know what the right questions are to ask. So we're working with the government of Peru. Their VMS will be public, I think, next month. And we've signed an MOU with Costa Rica and several other governments in the works.
Okay, thank you so far. So now we will listen to Matthias' ideas. Point of views.
Yes, thank you very much for your kind invitation. Is it the next one? Is it? Okay. I'm representing the German fish industry. So easy is the translation from Deutsch fish industry into fish industry in English, because fish industry means everything. I'm here for the processing industry, the ones who are in the value chain, getting raw material from all over the world and transferring it into cheap products. To cover your little hint, not every cheap product is an illegal product, just to say that at the beginning. I just want to show you a nice supply chain, and it's quite interesting that since many years, and it's starting in 2010, each kilogram of fish entering the German border, or not even the German border, but the EU border, has to be followed by a certificate. I will come later to this, but you can see all the challenges we have. We have here the fish, and even here you have seen data on transshipment which are bad. In general, no, they are not bad. They are necessary because we have ships outside in the sea, in the high sea, where they not return for some years. So we have to get the fish from there to transport it, for instance, to China for further processing. So you can see it's quite a nice chain, and you already see that there's a lot of data available and a lot of data are following, and more data are processed. Because if we see fish here, let's make a nice example so you have an idea. Let's say this is fish caught by a Russian trawler in the Sea of Okhotsk, 100 tons, and this 100 tons of Alaskan pollock, for instance, are now going to China for processing into fillets. From this 100 tons, you generate 50 tons of fillet, which is the one we want, because we are not so interesting to trade heads and tails through the world. So that we are interested in the fillets, and this fillets now goes from China, and let's say we have 50 units, and 25 of that 50 goes to US, and 25 goes to EU. The 25 going to EU are followed by a catch certificate, a paper. a paper with a stamp, and I will show you a sample of this from the captain, number of the ship. And the challenge we see is that this new certificate will be changed into the trip number, not even the ship number, but the trip of the ship. And I have no idea whether this is a unique, which is easy to follow. I have no idea, but this is the proposal from the EU Commission, quite recently issued. And as I told you, not only the money is flowing, but also the product is flowing and data. And one of the data is this tool. It's a regulation 1005/2008. You will find it in the internet very easily. And there are three major points. One point is this catch certificate, a paper which has to be issued on board of this factory vessel. So the captain will say, we have caught today 100 units of Alaskan pollock. And then this certificate goes to, which is in the Annex 2, which goes to China. There again, we have to add another certificate showing this 100 units have to be transferred into 50 units of fillet. And then this 25, as I told you, goes to Europe. And Europe now thinks that we can make it much easier now and say 25 divided by 2, half of this goes to the Netherlands and the other one goes to direct port of Hamburg. How at the end we can be sure that not in the Netherlands, sorry to say that, but it's just an example, they declare 50 units to be imported. But even if they would declare 50 units in Netherlands, and the EU will count everything together, they will come up to 75, and still are in the frame of 100, or of the 50. So there are doubts about the system of this paper-based catch certificate. And I would be very interested to hear from you other possibilities to make this certificate better in the sense of more trustable. This is only a little part. There are lots of information given in this paper. And the challenge is that it's not only numbers, it's names, it's signatures, it's stamps. How do you get stamps and signatures in a valid document? And as you know, and it's getting much more problematic in the future, if our friend Mr. Trump is heading, they will never tell us how much of this fish has entered in US. So we need, even if we don't know the whole pie, we want to be sure that 2/3 or 1/3 of this huge cake has been legally caught. That is the Annex 4, where we have to say if we have to transfer a product into fillets, or IQF fillets or fillet blocks, you have to give a very clear information about the catch certificate, about the name of the ship, the flag, validation day, and so on. So you don't know that, I know that. But that's why I'm here to tell you that there is today, when this was issued, I, as a managing director of the association, were telling to the media, now we have a paper tsunami. Because you can imagine that the documents here are piling up like hell. And all here in Hamburg, there's an institute called BLE, Bundesanstalt für Landwirtschaft und Ernährung. They're checking each consignment, each paper, each signature, each stamp. And that costs time. And it stands in the harbor, and the container will be not released. And people need the fish because they want to produce nice fish fingers. And if you read the media today, we have just had yesterday our press conference, you can see a very nice article in the Hamburger Abendblatt or in the FAZ or in the Süddeutsche, wherever you look, or Intrafish, you can see that we are an interesting market for fish. So this was my short introduction. I hope you be hungry to give me some idea. I don't like to use this bullshit bingo word, blockchain. I have no idea. But maybe this is an idea to help us to get a very good catch certificate, because the EU Commission has announced they want to come up with a new catch administration certificate tool called Catch. And if they come up with such an announcement, we know it will last not 2 years, it lasts 10 years, where they come up. And how do you want to use intelligence, market intelligence, to administrate deficits? If we have a problem to get the right figures, how can the Commission come up with a proposal not to think further, not to think for a much more sophisticated program, to make sure that this fish we are importing here comes from sustainable sources? And the last point, because our colleague from the mission was here saying, yes, he wished that the consumer can make more decisions. Yes, the consumer already today can follow the products. There are barcodes on this. There are internet links where you can see the name of the fisherman who has caught the fish. If you're interested, not his wife, because that is data protection, but the name of the fisherman. Not the picture, that's also forbidden, but the name. And we have, for social aspects, 2 new developments. 75% of all fish eaten in Germany comes from bigger trawlers, and they all have a SEDEX commitment, which is a voluntary commitment to respect human rights. And the latest development is, I don't know whether you're familiar with Marine Stewardship Council, MSC. It's a voluntary program, 20 years old now, focused on sustainable fish, but it's now opening working conditions on board in their assessments. So it's not only biological data which are giving green light to catch this stock, but also the way how people are treated on the boards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. So, from a consumer point of view, today, how is secured that imports into the EU of fish and seafood are legal?
99.9% are legal, and we are not controlling everything. I can assure that there are, in some cases, even through the politics, fishermen are driven into illegally, yeah, because rules are very difficult to fulfill. But if you look at European markets, or let's say, because I'm representing Germany, for the German market, I'm very sure that we have most of the fish with regard to legal and illegal and overfished. We have answers to that. It's also a quite interesting issue. If you look at the latest development on fish caught in the Baltic, right, there is a nice fish. The latest request was to cut quotas for herring and for cod, but because of they are overfished from the sense of scientific points. But if you don't have fishermen continuing fishing, then they will lose their knowledge, and then we get lost. We are losing them, and that we don't want. So there is still, from a scientific point of view, overfishing, but there is a legal fishing because they want to give the fishermen a chance to get with their activity into legality back, or overfishing back. So it's legal. It's legal overfishing. That's we have also to think about. I'm saying we have, in some areas, we have really problems, but if we don't fish, we'll have major problems in the future. That's something sometimes difficult to understand. Thank you.
I have a question regarding that topic. It's totally understandable that fishermen will lose their knowledge, But if there is no fish anymore, there's no job for the fishermen anyway. So I think it is very important to regulate in a dramatic way how fishing is done currently, and especially have a look on illegal fishing.
Yes, absolutely with you, no doubt. But as you have seen, a good example, the cod in the North Sea. It has been overfished over many years. Now there is an improvement because there are management plans, there are catch restrictions, there are catch limits. Even the recreational fishers, the anglers, have a back limit now. Anglers are only allowed to catch 5 fishes per day. That's because also these anglers can, with a big amount of people, they can influence the ecosystem by they're taking out fish in the same amount as the professional fishermen. So they have now a back limit. But on the other side, they have a fish stock has to be fished. Biology guys can tell you why. I'm not. I'm agriculture economist. I'm not a fisherman. But a fish stock has to be fished. So, but at a certain point, yes, we have to say stop, and that has been now to be defined by the EU member states in December. They will, or in October now, there will be the decision for the Baltic, in December for the North Sea. And yes, fishermen are the ones who suffer most under it. Yeah? But and on the other side, they are the ones who are interested most to have sustainable stocks available. So, and there is a little bit a problem if we are talking about how to declare a stock sustainable or not sustainable. You know that there was, in former times, a precautionary approach, which has a lower limit of size of biomass and fisheries mortality. Now we have, via Johannesburg Convention, we have a new concept of so-called sustainable maximum yield, which has increased the barrier a little bit higher, so there must be more fish left in the sea. And all these different management attitudes has to be respected if we are coming to say, yes, there is no fish in the water. There is still fish in the water. The question is, how can fishermen get this fish, and how can they do it economically? We will never catch the last fish. Before this happens, the fisher is bankrupt.
Paul, from your work, you look at the maps or at the oceans globally. And from our knowledge, we know like in Norway or Canada or Iceland, they have a good management on fisheries and they have better stocks. Are there areas in the world where you, looking at the map, say it's necessary to get them managed better?
So one of the studies recently that was done with our data had a conclusion which was unsurprising, which is that the bulk of the real IUU problems, right? And so in Europe and North America, it's a different class of problem that you deal with, right? That you're trying to refine and improve and, get from 99.9 to 99.99, right? But in other parts of the world, you're trying to get from, 10 to 50, right? So it's a whole different problem. So, and the rich world fishes in the poor world, right? And that's ultimately what the dynamic that drives this. And some of the developing nations are beginning to export their fishing as well. China, very notable in that group. Though I don't know if you count China as a developing nation anymore, probably not. But the vessels in Indonesia that were kicked out when they closed, they stopped issuing licenses to foreign vessels, and most of them really left. And because Minister Susi catches them and sinks them when she can. They went to Africa, many of them. And so some of them are running around probably near Liberia right now, doing the same thing they were doing in Indonesia, just now in waters where governments are not as committed as Indonesia is to clearing it out. So that's certainly where the global problem is, and that's how illegally caught fish or unsustainable fish ends up in supply chains that ultimately end in Europe and North America and Japan. So yeah.
And Shafri-san, I mean, you see, you're close. Malaysia is not that far from Indonesia, from our perspective.
That's right.
So do you Malaysia look at what Indonesia does, or is there a learning effect, or is there a change? Can you feel it, or?
All right, thank you. What was the Indonesian government was doing, especially with the IUU fishing, to combat IUU fishing? It was really great, especially coming from their Minister Ibu Susi, which is really well recognized worldwide. The thing is, in Malaysia, we should start somewhere, especially to detect and to track all these fishing vessels, especially the trawlers. At least we should start with the location-based service. Once we have the location, and then we can analyze, we can do all the pattern, all the behavior. And in order to manage this, after we take this vessel to the shore, to do the court order or whatsoever, the most important part is what is our next action once we have this vessel on shore. So how to manage them? We really looking forward to prevent from destruct all this vessel like Indonesian practice. So we need to think alternative way to sustain this vessel. For example, maybe we could utilize back this vessel that was detained by the government. For now, the most important part is to monitor them effectively, which is what we have started since 2014.
Okay. And Fred, so now Africa is one of the part where there can be improvements, which we just heard, and you worked with Liberia and Gabon. And do you see any other it's a governmental issue also, how they handle it, and if they control, and how it goes on. So do you see any movements, or is there any certain starting points of motivation for the governments to continue?
We as well working together with Tanzania, just to mention it, and these are the three countries in Africa currently who are in cooperation with Sea Shepherd. Peter Hemmerstead is currently on the road and going all around Africa, trying to get more countries in Africa to get aware of the circumstance that all the illegal trawlers in their waters killing all the fish, and that affects their local fishermen. Like, for example, when we came to Liberia, we had a stop in a little fisher town called Robertsport, and the fishermen said to us they are really, really thankful that Sea Shepherd is around, because 1 year ago, before we were there, the fishermen had to go out 2 weeks and they caught about 10 fish. And now, since we took action there, the local fishermen were actually able to catch fish near to their town, and they were not in danger anymore. Their children will not starve anymore. And I think this spreads more and more around African borders, and the waterlines and all the other countries recognize that it's very important for their local communities to get support, because all those countries around the coastline are so poor that they can't really afford their own vessels. So that's why I say that.
Okay.
there was a question about consumer power, and one consumer power we can see with the EU Commission when the catch certificates was introduced. I had it on my slide. There was also another point, what blacklisting of countries and also blacklisting of ships. We have a system which is difficult to say because now EU, having themselves to have not done their homework, are now telling third countries like Indonesia, like Malaysia and others, if you want to export to Europe, you have to make your homework. You have to install fisheries management. You have to install fisheries control. And Indonesia suffers a lot of this yellow card, which was issued. And since that time, there was a movement. And I think your engagement, your activities are very, very good because then they get on the track, not even to export, but also to get their families for their living having the fish. But it's interesting that EU is using this tool. At the moment, I think there are only 4 or 5 countries on the list. Comor, Cambodia, Sri Lanka was, it's back again. Thailand is, but Thailand is a little bit, it's tricky because if we look at countries, we also have to think about, we are talking about fisheries. All these countries, or most of them, are deliverers fish from aquaculture, which is not covered. So that's sometimes difficult to say. The yellow card for Vietnam is really designated for fisheries products from wild catch and not for aquaculture. And Indonesia and Malaysia is also, well, we have a lot of shrimps and other things from these areas. But I think it's good that we can use all these techniques. European fishermen, smaller fishermen, are totally against all kinds of surveillance issues, even cameras. They feel it's the same like today. We are all under surveillance here. Camera is going around. Every face is taken on. So it's like on board of a fishing vessel. You cannot do anything without being monitored. Think about that. And yes, I think there is, or we hope that with modern technologies we can improve the situation because everybody is interested in this very nice traded product. Fish is the only one worldwide traded product, more than cacao and coffee and so on. So I think if we can improve fish stocks, so we have for many years fish available. That's something we should fight for.
Okay, so
May I
go ahead.
on that? I just wanted to add that we at Global Fishing Watch have been impressed with the power of the yellow card, and that it fits well with our vision for how technology and policy can really change things, because it's clear from all the interactions we've had with governments, and we get invited in to say, how can we use Global Fishing Watch to solve all our problems? And the answer generally is you can't, because your problems are institutional, they're management problems, they're not really technology problems. And what's clearly required is governments have to have the will to institute, right, that you can go hire a company that will give you all the technology and all the data you need to manage your fishery effectively and sell you the consultants to run it. You just have to decide that you want to do it. And so the kind of work that Sea Shepherd does and in our view, our commitment to transparency drives that. And the yellow card is a very powerful tool because that clearly has motivated some of those countries to really change the way they think about managing their fisheries.
And these countries have the fantastic situation that they are a step ahead already. If you look at EU management of fish stocks, then Malaysia or Indonesia has much better system in force. The question is, do we have to keep all fishermen in fishing? Well, we have 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 600,000 tons of fish caught by our fishermen, and then we joined the EU and we lost 50% of our capacity. So fishermen has to get out of the fishing business. So it's another question. Do every fisherman has to follow his profession in the future if there is no fish available?
We have a few questions from the audience here. You showed us a lot of documents about the catching fishes. So how easy is to forge the catch annex document?
hope you don't know.
I'm not guilty.
No, I know.
I have my desk at the fishing harbor in Hamburg, which is no fishing harbor, but it's a fishing marketplace. I can smell the fish, so I see the fish is there.
So is it easy?
No, I don't think it's so easy, because we have tough institution here. Even if the signature is different, catch certificates go back, and they have to deliver a better copy of the signature. Even if the stamp is not fitting with the stamp sampling they have here in the harbor, you cannot get the fish in. Even if on some parcels the USA as initial is used, if some people only are printing US on, the border inspection will keep this out of entrance. So you can see there is a lot of, I think there are a lot of parts of trust in there, but a lot of NGOs are coming up and saying, no, we don't trust the system, and but never come up with the finger and show where is the problem. They are telling us because the fish goes via Netherlands to Germany is a problem. What the hell is this? Yeah, so yes, I hope that we can get more trust in the catch certificate if we have, let's say, this blockchain, something behind it, because it would be ideal if we can get at the harbor here to trace back to the fishing ground. And be sure that the 25 units from China, Alaskan pollock, are fit into the 100 tons caught in the Sea of Okhotsk, without having the need to ask Mr. Trump whether they have imported 20 tons or 20 units. That is the challenge, that we can really trust this document. And I've learned that only 25% of the ships have internet, which I think then could be a problem for the blockchain, but maybe you are more sophisticated and you can do it by other waves in the cloud or whatever. That's the challenge. I think a paper, or what we need, we need trust, parts of trust by a signature of a captain, signature of a transshipment captain, port inspection, and so on. So this will be checked, and some NGOs like GTF have accused Hamburg, the authorities here, not to check every consignment, which is nonsense. You make random samples and look where do you have possibly a problem. But as I told you, most of the fish is coming from the northern hemisphere from larger fisheries, which are very much controlled, where we don't have. But of course, yes, we are importing tuna, we are importing swordfish, but at a very, very minor quantity.
Yeah, I think maybe a way to sum up that answer might be, it depends on who's going to read it as to how easy it is to forge it.
Yeah, probably, yes. That's it, yeah.
When we talk to some African nations, we have trouble establishing whether a vessel is even registered or not. And you get a handwritten registry list emailed to you, the photograph of it, right? And then
you can make a false signature anyway.
So fishing, and then it's not on the list, and then you find out it was retroactively added to the list. So it just depends. It depends on where you are.
Well, Carsten has a question.
No, just maybe something to add. When you are talking about stamps and signatures, does not really sound like a digital solution, and because I'm looking, and this is a question that goes all except to Paul, what would your ideas for our hackathon, or do you have ideas for our hackathon, or what would make your or our life or the fisherman's life better? Is there something we can develop on Friday afternoon for you?
Thank you, Mr. Carson. I would love to take that question. Okay, one of the current practice in our country is we train our coastal fishermen for fishing for data. Any kind of digital data out there coming you say coming from AIS or imagery or whatsoever, and we gather this data into our application and translate them into control, monitoring, and surveillance application. So maybe one of the idea is to develop any kind of device that could monitor any data available out there. Thank you.
Yes, I think if you find a solution to take on board the information which are in this sketch certificate, which then are that unique that you don't need a signature anymore or a stamp. Maybe that could be a solution, because at the moment, as we learned, they have to cut a tree, they have to make paper, they have to have this paper on board, they have to fill in, and they have to make copies, which is every time bad, because with a copy, you know, the quality of the stamp and the signature disappears. So, and this is most of the cases our problem when we get fish here, that they have to send a second copy to get a better picture of the stamp and the signature. So if there is an electronical signature, if there is an electronical whatever stamp, coordination, which is unique, which can follow the fish, perfect.
Yeah, and for our work with Sea Shepherd and fighting against illegal vessels, I have in mind that it would be very handy to have a page where I just can say we are currently in area X, and a vessel with MMSI is blacklisted, is approaching your area at this position, go ahead. That would be very handy to have. Maybe you guys already have something like that. I think we should. You don't publish, okay? But that would be, that would be very nice, and would be. I mean, it really relies on the AIS. If it is running, most of the illegal vessels don't use AIS.
That's the problem, though.
That's
right?
the main problem.
Blacklisted vessels generally turn it off and keep it off.
And that's the problem. What happens when they turn it off?
But I can edit that there are already people and they use image recognitions for this, so that they can identify ships by just looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very promising. Right now, you can't do that really with a satellite because you don't have quite enough resolution and you're looking straight down. But with drones, which become cheaper every year and can fly further from shore every year, that's very doable. So that's an exciting area that's coming.
Yeah, that's what we basically are doing. We are patrolling around the economic zone of countries, and once we spot a target which we don't know via marine traffic, for example, or the AIS is unknown, and we fly our drone there, take a picture, and try to figure out what is this vessel, where does it come from, what's the flag, and that's for us very interesting. And then we try to do some research on the internet, and then we say, okay, we go for it.
So that's kind of an interesting sort of hackathon idea. So imagine, in the future, in the near future, there will be lots of drones like that running around taking lots of pictures of vessels, and a lot of those pictures will be of vessels that the operator of the drone can't say anything about it, doesn't have anything interesting to say, but if they had a place to send all that imagery, in a way it would all sort of get stitched together into a nice mosaic of lots of imagery, then other people could discover data about vessels that they are interested in from imagery that was acquired by somebody else. So that would be kind of cool to work on.
We have so many questions, so I would like to ask you, if someone has a question, please raise their hand and we come with a microphone. Would be much better for the next 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
I've got a question for this mister. I forgot your name, sorry. Right? Hello, okay. So you already mentioned the problem with the certification. And as far as I can, as far as I can see it, it was a pretty good example to show how centralized or heavily centralized systems reach their limit when it comes to scalability. So have you already thought about, or my question would be, have you already thought about maybe, I would say like decentralized solutions? You already mentioned blockchain, but the problem with blockchain, I think, is that it requires multiple persons that would certificate your papers. So maybe it would be a good idea to do something like relaxing the laws or rules in such a way that you would entrust the solution or entrust the certification to local experts. That way you would probably give up some control, but maybe it scales better than centralizing it.
In the way this is done, because the signature of the captain is unique, and if he can be, if he is giving a signature under a product which has not been legally caught, because you can of course look at the catch regime, and and times is he allowed to catch that fish? Was it a tonnage? And for instance, if the Sea of Ochotsk fish, you should know that all fish which is caught by vessel, even if it's transshipped, it has to go to a Murmansk for getting another stamp from the authorities. So there are already experts, local experts, giving these documents, but then we hear from NGOs telling us, no, that is maybe these people are corrupt. What should we do then? So that's why I'm a little bit frustrated to hear now that we will change this catch certificate to get a variable number on the trip number of the ship, as a trip number of the ship, yeah, in this document. I have no clue. And the other problem is that if EU will come up with a centralized system to validate catch certificates, we know that this will never ever happen, because between Netherlands and Germany and Brussels and I don't know what, some have drums, others have guitars, and others are playing electronic music. They are not a concert. There is no concert. So we will have problems. I have doubts that this is a real problem, that we have to centralize catch certificates. I think if fish coming in here in Germany, and it's fish which is really worthwhile to look at it. If you look at the Alaskan pollock, the kilos costs €3. It's nothing. If we go to tuna, we have much bigger prices, or swordfish. Then I think it's much more interesting to have a closer look at the fish and the sources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another question here.
Paul, you alluded to it just as we went into the question answer period. But when you collect satellite AIS, you're getting a picture of life on the ocean, not just fishing. Is anybody looking at an European Maritime Safety Agency is, I know for a fact, looking at also environmental protection or counter-smuggling? That's the two other big uses right there. And as also as oil field protection. You guys are all looking at the fishing area, but you're now the world's experts because you've done that. And you now have algorithms that could be applied to these other problems, especially counter-smuggling. Is anybody else looking at that I'm aware of?
I don't know anybody's doing anything big and public. Our partner SkyTruth is doing oil fields now, which is very interesting. So we're using satellite radar plus the AIS. We actually have to work pretty hard at Global Fishing Watch to remove the oil field activity and not detect it as potentially fish, because the oil field service vessels move around a lot like fishing vessels do. So that's an area that's sort of ripe for a broad public platform. But we have got fishing in our name, and we're publicly funded, so we leave that to other commercial ventures to do that kind of work.
So there's another question right here.
Still have a question about this certificate annex document that the captain signed in for the first time. The answer I was looking for was another. What if the captain forged the catch in first place? So if you're saying that the rich world is fishing the poor world, how could it be the 99% of the fish that came in is legal? That's, I think, is like some kind of a paradox.
Because of the fish species we are supplying here to the German market, we know that there are very small activities in illegal fishing in that respect. I'm not talking about tuna, I'm not talking about swordfish, I'm not talking about sharks. They are only without of tuna. Tuna has some impact in the market, but there we have MSC certification, we have from sustainability, we have a very clear picture. So that's why in general we are trusting this document, and there is another trust coming from this blacklisting of countries. If there are missions going out from Brussels to third countries and checking, are the authorities in that specific third country having structure, manpower, legal advice to fulfill the requirements EU is setting for import fish into EU. They are different than in US or New Zealand or Australia, but they're missions. And if these missions are coming back and they think this is not okay, then they are issuing yellow cards. And then you have half a year time to think about it and to react, and another half a year to come up with proposals, and another year to implement these proposals. So, like Indonesia has done it, I think. And there are still some problems. I know the Indonesian embassy is very busy informing us by giving us statements of improvement and so on, but still Commission is not happy because they have their ideas. Whether these ideas are good or not, I don't ask me. Yeah? I'm not a fisherman. For us, it's important, or let's say we have no idea how this carding system is working. We are not part of that. We are not asked. It's in the power of the group in the Commission, in the EU Commission, dealing with this, and they have their ideas. They maybe use all this data available and say, look, there's a problem, so we don't trust this state, and then they go to the mission. And I think it's, I'm sorry, I forgot to look up, I think it's 3 countries which are on the list at the moment as blacklisted. It's Comore Islands, it's Cambodia, and if you look at the quantities we get from these countries, you even need the 4 digits after the comma to calculate the part of that for our imports to Europe. So it's a little bit window dressing. Huh? They are showing risks. They want to make showing we are controlling, we do something, but whether this is really efficient, whether it's really proven, I have my doubts sometimes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? There's one over here. Could you please pass this? Oh, just a second. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Siegfried Schmuck from Offshore Monitoring. I have a question to the representative of Global Fishing Watch. So your system functions basically only when the AES transmitter is active.
That's right.
How often would you estimate, from your experience globally, do fishermen turn it off when they engage into IUU activities? And follow up on that is, what are your prospects about tackling this? Because you mentioned before satellite radar. I worked before at the European Maritime Safety Agency, and we did something for EFCA, which is the European Fisheries Control Agency, where we merge IES and radar images. And I wanted to know if you would maybe first your estimation and then I'll look into the future. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the system doesn't work when the transponder is turned off. Fishing vessels do turn their transponders off. Your question's impossible to answer when they're doing IUU, right? I don't know. We don't know what they're doing when it's turned off. There are many fishing vessels we see which will leave port with it on, turn it off, then turn it on again while they're fishing because it's a safety device and they need it. They don't want to get run over by a cargo vessel in the middle of the night. And then turn it off again and then turn it back on right when they get back in port. The reason for that is they don't want anyone to know where they're going, but they want to use it while they're there. So they don't want anyone following them out to their secret fishing grounds, or what they think are secret fishing grounds. So we see a fair amount of that, and it might be 10% of the total. So most of the fishing vessels that use it, big commercial fishing vessels that use AIS, use it almost all the time, with the exception of Chinese vessels in Chinese water, in the East and South China Sea, which is just a mess, and it's hard to tell what's going on there at all. So we don't even really have good estimates for what's really happening there. So it happens, and we think that the really kind of bad behavior, the spoofing, false identity, all that kind of stuff, that's only a couple of % of the large commercial fishing vessels which we can track with AIS. So that's sort of an answer, I think. What we're doing about the non-broadcasting vessels, so that's really difficult, and of course super difficult to actually identify them because you really need a drone flying up next to them in order to know for sure who it is. But we're using night light satellite imagery from NOAA has a satellite system called VEERS that lets us detect the lights from fishing vessels, and that gets us fishing vessels that use light to fish, so squid and Pacific chowry and a few other species. So that's really interesting, and that's kind of working. So you can see the whole fleet at night, and you get imagery every night. We're also using satellite radar. Satellite radar, as you know, is expensive, so it's not something we can use comprehensive globally, except for the stuff that European Space Agency publishes from the Sentinel satellite constellation, which we're working now to produce a global uniform product from that, where we'll just detect all the vessels that are in the imagery. But that only gives you a repeat of once every 2 weeks, so it's not really a monitoring system. It's just really an assessment system. What's that?
6 days.
6 days. Oh, well, with the new system, yeah, right. So we're just using Sentinel-1 right now. And here in Europe, maybe you have 6 days, but the places we care about, I don't think we ever get 6 days. So that's in its infancy, really, to do on a global, comprehensive way, though there are lots of companies that use that kind of technology to do really focused monitoring of specific areas. The exciting thing is the microsatellite revolution that's coming right now. All AIS satellites now, Spire's huge AIS constellations, all these little tiny cheap satellites, and that's coming to satellite radar in the next couple of years. We'll see those go up. So we'll see a lot more data, which means the costs for satellite radar will probably come down by an order of magnitude in the next 7 years, maybe. And then that means you'll be able to use it in a lot more comprehensive way, which is very exciting.
So let's have 1 or 2 more questions before we have lunch. We have one here.
Well, I was just going to comment on the microsats and SAR that Paul just mentioned. I'm giving a talk tomorrow about Capella, which is the 36 microsatellites all doing SAR and AIS on the same satellite. And once the full constellation's up there, it's going to be about an hour refresh anywhere on the globe. So that's in the AIS network session tomorrow in the conference.
Thank you very much. So one last question, anyone? Or is all the questions answered over here? And then we can have some food.
I'll try to make it quick. So I think the question is for everyone on the panel. I think when we discuss about IUU fishing, I think we concentrate or we talk more about things happening in Asia and Africa. So my question is, I know our partner Oceana has been using our data to come up with some research about how European are also doing IUU fishing, like the Spanish fleet who actually turn off their transmitter getting into an MPA, marine protected areas, or some Spanish vessels or European vessels fishing in Africa. So have you got any experience in this one? And how many are there actually? How big is the intensity of Europeans or Western countries doing IUU fishing?
Thanks.
I just can say it currently for Germany, where we as well facing IUU fishing, especially in the Baltic Sea, which is why Sea Shepherd Germany starts their own campaign for the Baltic Sea to protect the Schweinswale. I can't really remember the English word now. Green mammals, thanks. And because there are a lot of nets in marine protected areas where they should not be, so we go out and document them and send them all to the government and say, hello, guys, please do something. This is not right. And about other countries, I know that Sea Shepherd Italy is doing a lot of campaigns around Sicily to find illegal feds. And Sea Shepherd France is protecting their coastline because fishermen killing a lot of dolphins there that bycatch from vessels. And Sea Shepherd UK is currently again on Faroe Islands documenting all the grinds that are happening there, and these are all the illegal activities I can remember currently.
Okay. Now we finished?
Are we finished? Shall we ask a last question, or do we need to hurry up for lunch?
Well, one last question, then we have lunch.
I think we should give them a word. So thank you so much. Maybe we just go around here. So what do you think? There is illegal fishing. Where will we be in 5 years? What do you expect? Where do you expect the fastest modification?
I think as soon governments and society are continuously working together to fight against IUU fishing, we will make a lot of progress. I'm not just talking about Sea Shepherd, it's just all organizations around the world who are interested to stop illegal fishing, and I think those partnerships are the solution for the near future to combat IUU fishing and to make a lot of progress in that specific topic.
Thank you. We believe that the technology is not the challenge. We have the right tools, the right technologies here in this industrial revolution era. But then the governments and the society really have to take into active engagement and participation together with the NGO and together with the coastal fishermen, especially to enhance, to improve their practice, and that will be happen for the next 2 or 3 years. I do believe that. Thank you.
Right. So I think that what needs to happen is that the management regimes, like what happens in Europe, need to happen everywhere. And we need to collectively decide what to do about the high seas, which is a big problem because that's truly a transnational tragedy of the commons happening right now in the high seas, where everybody's motivated to overfish, and there's very little motivation to conserve. And we need regimes that get at the small scale vessels, since that's sort of half the biomass of wild caught fish. So ultimately, I think it comes down to motivating the governments of the world to have the will to manage their fisheries and to realize that it's an asset that they're going to have to act if they want to preserve it.
Well, I think after listening to some of the comments, what will be from the technology part available in the future, that we get drones very easy and other satellite systems. I think it's very interesting to see how this development can be jumped into our sector, and that can be linked. And of course, as fish is internationally treated, we need FAO as a leading part to do it, but we know that it's very slow moving. So that's why I really appreciate private campaigns combined with governmental issues, because it should not be an attack, it should be a support. And I think that is the one you're doing, and we have started with as a part of the industry 20 years ago with the implementing or funding the Marine Stewardship Council to get forward. And now we see that we have new challenges by new modern technology, and I think that can be really improve the security to have sustainable fish on our plates. That's very positive. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Well, and thank you, Sabine Wedell, for the wonderful host. Thank you. So we will have now lunch, and we will go on with our third panel, shipbreaking, ship recycling, in about 1:15. So we have about 1 hour. Finger food is down there and drinks, and we can sit outside. We have banks and seats